In this video, we're going to cover the 5-point method for graphing sinusoids. We're going to start with the most basic one, which is just sine x here. But I'm going to do it in a detailed manner to show you all the steps we're going to need for the later ones here. So you're going to want to figure out all the following. You're going to find out what the period is. And we know that the period is 2 pi over whatever the coefficient of x is. We call that b. So for the standard side graph, the period is 2 pi. When we want to find our starting point, we take whatever's inside the sine or cosine and set it equal to 0. So in this case, my starting point is at 0. My end point is always going to be the start plus the period. So in this case, it's going to be 2 pi here. And the last thing on the x-axis that we need is the increment, which is always going to be period over 4. So in this case, it would be an increment of pi over 2. Now we also need things for the y-axis. We are going to need the high, medium, and low values for your function. Because the way sines and cosines, they always go back and forth between high and low values. The medium is always going to be whatever vertical shift you have here. In this case, there's no vertical shift, so my medium is 0. Then to figure out your high and your low, you add and subtract your amplitude. So in this case, my amplitude is 1. I take my 0 and I add 1 and subtract 1. Once you have these, you're going to go ahead and mark them on your graph, and you can choose exactly where you want to mark them. So if you want to make it 1 hash mark is 1, that's fine. If you want to make it 1 hash mark is 10, that's fine. Whichever way makes the graph look nicer for you is perfect. Then we need to work out the x-axis here. So again, this one, the start is at 0. And we're going to go to period of 2 pi. Now you decide how far out you want to go. Maybe I'll do 4 lines here to go to 0 to 2 pi. We're going to take our increment and start with the starting point and add it up. So 0 plus pi over 2 is pi over 2. Add pi over 2 again, you get pi. Add pi over 2 again, you get 3 pi over 2. And then once you have this grid down, if you want to draw the graph, just remember that the way sine goes looks like this. It's always medium, high, medium, low, medium. So medium, high, medium, low, medium. That's why it's called the 5-point method. And this gives us 1 period of our sine graph. Now if you want to keep going to have 2 or 3 periods, you can do that. But usually I ask for 1 period, so this is what we get. So you got to remember for sine, it's medium, high, medium, low, medium. And when we get to cosine later on, just to remind you here, cosine is high, medium, low, medium, high. But let's turn our attention to the second sine graph here. We can do left and right side independently. I'll do the high, medium, low first this time, just to change it up. Medium is always the shift, so I'm shifting up 7 here. My amplitude is 2, so 7 plus 2 is 9. 7 minus 2 is 5. I'll find out my period here is 2 pi over pi, so my period is 2. My start point, I take whatever is inside the sine, set it equal to 0. I'm going to get x equal to 1 here. My end, start plus period, is going to be 2 plus 1. Doesn't matter which order I write them in, but just to be consistent here, start is 1, period is 2. I get 3. And my increment here is my period over 4. So 1/2 or 0.5 if you want to. So I'm going to go ahead and mark. I'm going to just pick this to be 7, this to be 9, and this to be 5. Obviously this is not going to be to scale, but we don't really care on that. All we care about is having the right values everywhere. I'm going to go ahead and say that I'm starting, this is x is 1, and then this will be the ending point of 3. And so I go by increments. 1 plus 1/2 is 1.5, 2, 2.5, and then to 3. And finally, now I can put in my dots: medium, high, medium, low, medium. And there's your sine graph. Again, that is what I want to see. I want to see all the things properly labeled here, as well as your 5 points for your graph. One of the reasons why this is important this way is not only do I see you know exactly what points are going on in your graph, but it also means that your graphing calculator is not just going to do the problem for you, because the graphing calculator is going to show you the whole graph, not just one period here. And oftentimes, especially if you have like things as pi over 2 on your x-axis, it's not going to give you that as pi over 2. It'll give you as a decimal answer. So this is the way that I can really see that you know what you're doing on these problems. Now for cosine, it's again the same process, just with a different pattern of the dots here. This one I have a shift down 1, so -1 for medium. Amplitude of 5, so +5 and -5. My period here is 2 pi over 2 is pi. My start point is 2x minus pi over 4 is 0. X is going to be pi over 8. My end point is pi over 8 plus pi is 9 pi over 8. And my increment is period over 4. It's pi over 4 here. So let's see here. I'll make this -1 for my medium. I'll make this -6 for my low. And I'll make this 4 for my high. Now I'm starting at pi over 8. I'll just go ahead and call this one pi over 8. And I'll call this one the end point will be 9 pi over 8. Now to mark these other x-axis points, we need to take our start point and add our increment over and over again. This one might be a little bit harder to do in your head. Common denominator would be 8. I'm going to have 2 plus 1 is going to be 3 pi over 8. That's my second point here. And then if you add another pi over 4 to that, you're going to get 5 pi over 8. And then one last increment to add in to get 7 pi over 8. And once you have your grid set up, cosine starts out at high, medium, low, medium, high. And there is my graph of one period of cosine.